Hello and welcome to another very special interview here on SAFC Fan TV. I'm joined with Tom from 4-0 written all over it, Portsmouth's official fan channel. Tom, how you doing?
Very well, mate. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. First of all, commiserations from Monday night with the penalty shootout defeat to Oxford United in the semi-final of the playoffs. How are you feeling after that one?
Absolutely gutted, if I'm completely honest with you. Yeah, it was because it was so close and there were two very evenly matched teams for over 180 minutes and then on into extra time over the two legs. And then to lose by a penalty is a really tough one to take. You'll remember yourself at Wembley more than a year ago now. It was as close, if not closer. But yeah, so that it was a really tough one to take. I actually don't think we deserved it, given the way we played over the two legs. I think Oxford were the better side if you considered everything that was put out on the pitch. But yeah, I just think it was we were really up for it as well. Everyone was thinking, right, this is third season now, third time lucky, we're going to do it now. But sadly, it wasn't meant to be. And wish all the best to Oxford against Wickham next Monday, I think it is, at Wembley.
I was watching the game. A few refereeing decisions let you down, particularly I thought in the first leg. But I guess in the playoffs, it's all about the luck of the draw, really. You don't have to necessarily play well, particularly in the League One playoffs, to get the wins that can seal you promotion as well.
Yeah, it's Gavin Ward was the referee we had on the first leg, and he's been a bit notorious from a Pompey fan's perspective for being someone who's a little bit inconsistent with the decision making, but such is the modern world in League One, I suppose. But we can't base the loss of two games over two legs on poor refereeing decisions. As we all know, the playoffs, as you just said, is a lottery anyway, but even more amplified by the fact that the way the season was finished and just it turned into even more of a stab in the dark for whoever's going up. I actually think Fleetwood played the better game against Wickham on the second leg, and obviously because there were too many goals down and too many men down from the first, then they struggled. The flip side of that is Oxford were much better than us in the second leg, and I think we were probably just as good as them in the first. So back to your question, I don't think you can blame you can't blame a playoff defeat on a referee. The one we had in the second leg was much better. I think we still should have had a couple of decisions that went our way, at least 2 red cards and maybe a penalty shout. And then in the first leg, quite a few, maybe 3 upwards penalty shouts. So maybe because fans weren't there, no way to influence the referee in that respect. But we as I said, we can't blame a refereeing decision on the reason why we didn't make it to Wembley.
Yeah. It was such a shame how the season in League One this year eventually ended. With the fixtures you still had left, are you confident you would have got enough wins to get you in the top 2?
I'd like to think so. I think we were definitely on a bit of a run at the time. I think the interesting thing is if either team we played on the 10th of March, the Fleetwood game, that 2-2 draw. If either team had lost that game, they wouldn't have actually made a playoff spot. It would have been Peterborough in their place, which is just shows how fine margins the season's been. I think if we'd kicked on, I don't know how many games were left, 9 or 10 games, I think we might have been looking at a different story. But then the flip side of that is maybe we might have had a really bad run of games and ended up not even being in the playoffs. So from a Pompey point of view, I think it would have been fine either way had we continued with the season, because then we'd have an outside chance of automatic promotion. But at the same time, we had a healthy playoff spot at the time, so I think Pompey fans were kind of happy to go either way. But I personally would have liked to see the season finish for all means, in terms of sporting integrity as well, for yourselves, for Peterborough, for all the teams, Ipswich, for them to have a decent shot at finishing a season and for it not to be based on a mathematical equation. I know the whole table is based on a mathematical equation, but not the particular one that it was decided on this season.
Yeah. I mean, I have this conversation with my dad all the time. Would you have liked to have seen your side win promotion without fans in the stadium? It would be heartbreaking to watch, as well as slightly bit good at the same time. But I guess hopefully, fingers crossed, next season there will be a strategy in place to get football fans back into stadiums again. I think as the years go on, we'll just see this season as a complete write-off.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The struggle with getting fans back into the stadium is that it will be the very last thing that is allowed to happen by the government, because of a mass gathering is probably the biggest breeding ground for a virus to spread, and we don't have to be a doctor to know that. But I think that one of the things that I saw in various different places was that fans would be allowed in. Maybe they'd have stadiums filled to a third of their capacity for seats around, much like the benches are at the minute in the Premier League and Championship, to allow seats around like any household of fans or family or whatever to sit. And then the following week, season ticket holders would sit in their seats, or they'd sit in the seats that weren't occupied that week, and it would have to be done on that kind of basis. I think it will be a very long time. I don't think the calendar year of 2020 will see a full return for fans back into the stadium as we knew it in February, March. I think it will be a very long time before the government can actually say, you know what, right, it's safe now, let's just get everyone back into a stadium and into the same place at once. Because we saw it down where I live, not obviously in Bournemouth, but near enough to Bournemouth, that the scenes on the beaches and that kind of crowd packed onto a very small space, and the implications that has, that will be just like a football stadium, and everyone's on top of each other. And you imagine a 92nd minute winner celebrating with people around you and like landing on top of someone you've never met before. And that's just a perfect example of how a virus can spread. So I think it will be a long time before we see fans back into stadiums as normal. But to actually get to watch your team in a 60% empty stadium, I think a lot of people would take that over full capacity in months to come. But I don't know how long it's going to be until the next season resumes, because obviously we've had quite a lot of a break between the bulk of the season and the last couple of games in both the Prem and the Championship. So however long that break will be, I'm not sure if that's been announced yet. But yeah, I think it will be an uphill struggle in terms of getting fans back into stadiums as they normally would be, and it shouldn't be too long before we get people back in some way. What do you think, mate?
Well, going on to next season, apparently there is a potential start date being discussed in September, but we don't know whether, like you said about fans coming back in, the safety measures will be in place where they'll have no one sitting around them. They'll have like a couple of seats in between. But then again, I'm looking at it and think, will that still put people off from going? Because there could be a measure put in place where people's temperature could be checked before you go in. And although people want to see football, it's still like not part of like the full day, really. Just like going to see your team, like cheering on your team for 90 minutes and like enjoying the match day atmosphere. It's just completely taking it away. And like, I think for many months now, football will never be the same again.
There's the other argument about travelling to and from a stadium, isn't there? And you get in a car, or you get on a bus, or you get on a train, or whatever. And it's the whole getting to the stadium. I don't know, pubs before, pubs after, getting home, etc. So it's not just the football game that we've got to be wary of, is it? It's the entire occasion, the entire day for a fan to deal with.
I mean, I went to you lot this season. I mean, Fratton Station is only a few minutes walk from the ground, but the way the amount of fans that were queuing on the platform and still even queuing to get into the station, you think of like, even with the social distancing, if it's still in place going into the start of next season, it will just take fans just a very long time to even get back onto the train to get back home, or even come into the ground as well. So yeah, those need to be thought about as well, like you touched upon, like getting to the stadium and also getting away.
To take Fratton Station as an example, or the tram stop that's near the Stadium of Light just over the bridge. I remember coming up to Sunderland and seeing that. They're two very good examples where Fratton Station is an old station and it's a really kind of tight walk to get over the bridge, over the tracks, and then onto Goldsmiths Avenue and walk all the way down. There's no way that you can socially distance in a place like that with that volume of people. And I think the same is, I'm not sure what the bridge is called, but the green bridge that goes across.
Yeah. St. Peter's metro station, mate.
There we go. That one. People getting off the tram. Yeah, getting off the tram and then getting up to the stadium. And yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be considered very carefully.
Yeah. Going back to your squad this season, obviously you've got some standout players in your team with Hawkins, John Marquis, Ronan Curtis. I think the big question is now is who you're going to be able to keep from that lot, considering that you are going to be playing in League One another season. But I think one thing I will say about some of the players in your squad, they are very, very committed to Portsmouth Football Club and they do see long-term futures, but it's all about now whether clubs come in from higher divisions and tempt them away with a lot of money.
We're very lucky to have a brick by brick mentality at the football club where everyone is part of it, and it's given what's happened in the past to us. I'm sure that'll be another question in a moment, but given the really choppy waters that we've sailed through, we're now onto the straight and narrow in terms of ownership, and I think that reflects very well on the management and then down to the players and fans. So the season, Ollie Hawkins is gone. I think he's had his third and final season. He confirmed that on his social media, which honestly I don't think is a massive loss to the side. He didn't make that much of an impact to our team, and I think a lot of Pompey fans would agree. He's a target man for the ball for 20 minutes at the end of the game. John Marquis, I think he's been underrated massively by a number of Pompey fans. He's scored among one of our top goal scorers this season. I throw Ronan Curtis in there as a potential for a lot of Championship clubs. He's already received Championship interest regardless of how this season ended up, and now I worry that will be amplified even more given the fact that we've now had another failed season in League One, and whether that interest, as you say, would tempt him away from the football club. I really hope not, because he lives and breathes Pompey, as do a number of the players. I think we'll struggle next season with Ronan Curtis not in our side, because he's been really key to our success this year. I wouldn't actually call it success, but he's been key to our season this year. Andy Cannon is another influential player. He's a fan's favourite, not just his offensive play, but his defending from the front. He could easily play in the Championship, and I think that's clear to be seen, as is Marcus Harness. He's an excellent talent as well. So when all those three play, he scored the goal at Oxford on Monday. So when all those three play in the same team, and when the formation's right and the motivation's right, I think it's a really difficult team to play against. I think we've proved that over the last couple of seasons. But Championship success beckons for a lot of players, and I just hope that they can stick with us for at least one more season and see if we can get there ourselves.
How confident are you, would you say, going into the start of next season, depending on what signings you can bring in and also the players that you'll be able to keep as well?
Not as confident as I was at the start of this season, I'll be honest. I thought, especially after the break that we had and the teams that ended up in the playoffs, to no disrespect to any fans of the teams that might be watching or listening to this, but I think it was a very easy playoffs from a Pompey point of view. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. And it's not going to be as easy next season. I think yourself, Sunderland, will take a real good look at yourselves and think, right, we need to really get cracking next season, as will Ipswich, as will Peterborough, as will teams coming down, Barnsley, Luton, and potentially even up to Charlton Athletic, as really kind of, I know that hasn't been decided yet, but they could potentially come down as well. So it will be a really tough league next season. I think we've really thrown away a chance of success this year. To go back to your question, no, I don't think that we will be as successful next season, just because of the teams and the talent that will join us for League One next year. Got to stay positive, got to really hope that somehow we put a run of games together, or we do whatever it takes necessary to get out of this league, because I think, and you will agree with me, that both Sunderland, Portsmouth, Ipswich, not the sort of teams that belong in League One. So yeah, I'd like to see both of us go up next season. First and second would be lovely. But yeah, the realistic to be realistic about it, I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's a lot more teams that are a lot more likely to go up next year other than us.
Yeah, and also like the atmosphere you generate at Fratton Park, that's helped you massively this season with your terrific home record, and potentially with fans not being allowed back into stadiums next season, that could like affect the team's confidence on the pitch. But I'm going to lead on to now your manager, Kenny Jackett, experienced guy, particularly down in League One, at managing various clubs over the years. Where do you stand on him? Do you feel like his journey at Portsmouth has come to an end, or would you like to see him stay on as manager?
It's a really tough one to answer, because this is now the third consecutive failed season that we've had under Kenny Jackett. And I think at the start of this season, a lot of Pompey fans would sit there and say, well, if he doesn't do it this year, then it's time to go. I, like many others, well, definitely people that I've spoken to, I'm not going to say myself, but people that I've spoken to will not renew their season tickets next season unless Kenny Jackett has left the club.
Really?
And I think that's definitely a majority feel around for Pompey fans at the moment. From people I've spoken to, a major shake-up is required. Whether the owners and the CEO will have the intentions to do so, I'm not sure. I think it really, something needs to happen desperately to cement Pompey fans back together, because at the minute they are properly broken into two halves. The ones that think, right, we've had another season and we'll be up, or people that sit there and actually say, well, do you really want to watch another season of what you've just seen? But you're either hot or cold, aren't you? Right now, you're either Kenny must go, and that's not good enough. We're Portsmouth Football Club. Why are we not in the Championship now? And then there's other people that sit there and say, well, we nearly got there. And then the argument to that would be, well, we didn't, and that wasn't good enough. As I said, I don't really want to give my personal opinion, because there's a lot of people that I will upset if I do. But I just think it's something needs to happen, whether that's something is a change in management, whether that's something is a change in morale, a boost in confidence that can be generated from the management that's there now, or whether they just need to completely start again. I think the one thing that I would say to any Pompey fan or any team that supports a football club watching is, think of the financial implications of changing a whole management structure right now in the current climate that we find ourselves in. I don't think it's wise at the moment, and I think it will be a really an even more difficult season for us if we do change the management around. Having said that, it does desperately need to change. Whether now is the time to do so, I'm not sure. If that answers your question in the best way possible.
Well, it's such a difficult time for the game that right now, even the fans like renewing season tickets, because they're not necessarily going to be guaranteed what they pay for right now, because we still don't know on next season about how fans are going to be brought back in. I think it's going to be, personally, a step-by-step process. You can't do it all at once, because there'll be like massive repercussions for that.
Yeah, our CEO, Mark Catlin, has come out and said that he won't put season tickets on sale until there is certainty and clarity on whether fans can be allowed back into stadiums next season or not. I think that's a wise move, and I think a lot of football clubs, if they haven't already, will follow suit and say, look, we're not going to charge people for football that they won't be able to sit and watch. So, yeah, I think that's where we stand at the moment, is we're going to wait to see how this whole thing pans out. And then we can make a decision. As you say, you can make a dynamic risk assessment based on what's in front of you at the time to say, well, actually, we can let people in, or no, we can't let people in, and they've got to stay away from the football club. Things like half-season tickets will then probably be battered around in the boardrooms, and whether that can be of any help to fans that want to get back into their stadium and watch their team play. I'm not sure how much you know about it, mate, but I saw a little bit of trouble in terms of Sunderland announcing some ticket stuff. I didn't read into it too much. But
it's all up in the air right now, because at the moment, all fans are wondering is just how they're going to be able to follow the step-by-step refund process, which goes on until, I think, like the beginning of August, of like fans who had season tickets but getting money back for the games that they didn't attend, and that was like called off completely because of coronavirus at the end of last season. So yeah, it's all, we've appointed a new CEO recently to take care of the duties that Stuart Donald was meant to do, because Stuart Donald obviously right now is trying to sell the football club. And there's just a massive unsettlement right now between the board and the fans. And going into the start of next season, even if fans were allowed back in, our attendances right now, unfortunately, are going to drop massively, which is a worrying sign, because when teams come to the Stadium of Light, they are quite intimidated by the size of our crowd. And with that reduced next season, that could really affect the team on the pitch, which I worry. But hopefully it can be sorted out soon and we can find a new owner, fingers crossed, that will be able to take the club in the right direction and sort out the financial mess that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, no, we've been there in terms of financial messes. We had one of the biggest messes that anyone's ever seen. So, but yeah, it starts from the top, doesn't it? In terms of the success of a football club, it really does. And if you've got an owner that's passionate about your football club and wants you to do well, then I think you'll be fine. Luckily, we have that. Now we didn't before, and it's troubling times at Sunderland, isn't it? And it's not a specialist subject of mine, but I can see from the outset that it's not a great place to be right now, and hopefully that changes and it's a successful one next season and back up into the Championship and kick on from there, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, the big worry us Sunderland fans have right now is the situation at Wigan, and like how just a few dodgy dealings and like a lack of leadership in the boardroom can have massive consequences. And now they're facing a 12-point deduction going into the start of next season in the Championship. I know they've appealed against it and they've got some buyers knocking on the door, but it just shows it can happen to anyone. I've touched this on SAFC Fan TV with the other lads. I mean, 7 years ago, they won the FA Cup. And then 7 years down the line, they found themselves in administration. And it's the same with you guys. You were FA Cup winners in 2008. And then 2 years later, you went into administration as well. So it just shows that there has to be a clear direction and the right management to handle financial situations in the boardroom at any football club.
Nothing's too far away is what I'd say as well. You think that we actually made the final at Wembley in 2010.
Yeah,
that was kind of a last hurrah before everything kind of caved in on us. So, and things were starting to look dodgy then even. So, yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? And it's going to happen to a lot of clubs. Unfortunately, we saw with Bury, even before COVID-19, they were struggling, and now obviously the news of Wigan. And I think sadly a lot of clubs will follow suit, ones that can't and haven't got the financial backing, or the ones that are only just treading above water from season ticket revenues and all that comes with it. And then now that's completely been eradicated from their income. What do they do now? So I think it will happen. Luckily, I don't think it will happen to Sunderland. You might want to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see that happening. But there are a number of clubs that you can see that are in the Football League that will really, really struggle next year.
I mean, how I look at it is down in League One, so many clubs rely on Matchday revenue to generate their income. And I know there's that big debate whether the Premier League should help out the lower league clubs, but at the same time, the Premier League need to generate the money to do that by finishing their season first. So I think it's important they get that out the way and then potentially look at the problems that are being faced in the lower divisions, because if the Premier League don't finish their season, they'll miss out on millions of pounds, which that money could generate a lot of, help and support to like the financial situations with the teams that we come up against in League One.
There's a dreadful discrepancy between the wealth of the Premier League and to an extent the Championship.
They're in their own little bubble, aren't they? They're
like
miles ahead.
Exactly, and you've only got to look at. I think it was recently that the takings of agents, or the expenditure on agents for clubs, was released, and it was multi millions of pounds higher in the Premier League than it was at even Championship and League One level. And it's such a shame that there's so much of a gap between the Premier League, the league that's watched by 3 billion people around the world, and then just around the corner there's, well, even from, say, Man United, just around the corner there's Bury, who were literally on their last legs, and then sadly gave way. And Wigan isn't far from Manchester United, arguably the biggest club on the planet, and look what's happened to them. So there is so much of a gap, and it's so clear to see, and sadly there's not a lot that people can do about it, because of not blaming people, but because the revenues from Sky and because of all the broadcasters around the world, BT, whatever, the way people watch it, the money that's spent on players and transfers, etc. in the Premier League is extortionate compared to anything. I think John Marquis, we bought him for a couple of £1 million, for example, and that buys you Martial's toe, for example, doesn't it? So you just think that, well, it's a funny comparison to make, but it's there's a lot of truth in it, and I just think that there's so much of a gap, but so little can be done about it.
Yeah. So moving on from the financial problems in the game right now, Tom, looking back on the games we played you this season, we first met you at the Stadium of Light back in August last year. It was a 2-1 win for us, early kickoff live on Sky Sports. What did you make of that game over? It was a bit, I personally thought you dominated us the first 45 minutes, but we found ourselves 2-1 up, which is very, very, very strange, particularly because at home, we always seem to have like faulty performances like that, where teams normally start better than us, but we still manage, if we get those chances, we will put them in the back of the net. And I think looking back on that game now, we luckily just had a brilliant second half performance with our new signing, Jordan Willis, being absolutely superb in that game. He got a goal, and his defensive duties in the second half, closing down some of your forward players, were absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I just felt you guys deserved at least a draw from that game. I thought you lot played very well.
I was there for that one, actually. And I remember being up in the gods at the Stadium of Light, and we played towards us in the first half. Was it Marcus Harness that scored for us? I think it was early on.
Yeah, we were shocking.
Yeah, so that 10 minutes. Yeah, exactly. So that at that point we were thinking, oh, brilliant! This is the best start that we could have wanted. And Sunderland away, probably biggest away game of the season, and then brilliant. And then the problem is with Pompey, and it's happened for years, is where it starts so brightly, and you can that comparison with the Oxford game. We start so brightly for the first 45, and then we score and sit back massively, and then teams come at us and work us out. And I think you worked us out in the second half and managed to cut off any supply lines that we had moving forward, and all we could do was just sit and watch you play football. So, and I think that's happened to us a lot. And for the games that we've played against you, other than the Wembley final, where I think you had the first half and then we had the second, it was a real game of two halves. But yeah, I think what I remember from that game is Marcus Harness's goal, and then it was just all Sunderland. And sadly, that's happened quite a lot when we've played you. On the flip side of that, December was a great win for us.
Yeah, I mean, it was the game back at Fratton Park, the reverse fixture. I think it was February. The 2-0 win for you guys. I think we were at that stage on a brilliant unbeaten run. We played this very effective 3-4-3 system, and going in as the game like slowly progressed, I knew you tactically figured us out spot on. And a set piece into the box, Christian Burgess, who normally gets his head on everything every time we play you, puts one in the net. And then second half, you come out all guns blazing. A second goal very early on. I can't remember, was it Bolton?
James Bolton.
James Bolton, yeah, got the second one. And we just looked completely out of ideas. And I think every time we come up against you, you're always in the game. And that's like particularly with a lot of League One clubs we play. Normally when we score the first one, we never see them or hardly test our keeper for the rest of the 90 minutes. But I think some of your players realise the importance of playing us, because if you get, was it a point or even a win, then it could have massive rewards at the end of the season, because it could potentially take you higher than us.
I agree. It's a really important fixture. I think it's for both teams, actually. It's of equal importance. And just because of the size of the two clubs and how well matched they are in terms of their fan bases, how much the football club is the beating heart of either city. Yeah, just the fact that we've got noisy neighbours down the road, both of us as well. I think that plays a part. But the games itself, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Where once we felt like we had the momentum to keep pushing, then we just did, and we managed to find the second one, and then the game's pretty much killed off, isn't it? So
Yeah.
and yeah, it's turned into a little bit of a derby, hasn't it, between the two clubs over the last
You're
couple
not
of
a fan
years?
of teams playing in red and white, are you, Tom?
No, we don't like them. We don't like them at all. It's always a harrowing strip when we play teams in red and white. But yeah, so that's probably a factor as well. But yeah, we've worked up a little bit of a derby, and it's a nice rivalry that I hope takes us into next season. But yeah, it's definitely it's always one to look forward to, isn't it? The Sunderland Pompey game, and they always like to select it for an early kickoff in Sunderland for us to get up nice and early and get up there on Sky. So yeah, but long may it continue, and the two clubs and the rivalry stands.
Yeah, I mean, in the 2018-19 season, which was our first season in League One, all the games that I've watched that we played against you, they were just brilliant games to watch, apart from, I would say, the second leg in the playoff semi-final where we basically put 10 men behind the ball to seal the 1-0 aggregate win. But there's always entertainment value. Maybe, was it take aside the violent parts of it, but just some of the players, when we come up against you lot, that they just know what it means. Just it's just like the passion's there. Because obviously we do miss playing against the derby teams and the teams that we can't stand. Obviously, us being Newcastle and you lot being Southampton. Was it scum, as you call them? Is that correct? This is Scummers. You don't worry, you don't have to go into that. But yeah, it's just it's sort of like exciting to have that in League One, but also you'd wish it would be in a higher division, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think football is very lucky to have a rivalry between two clubs that is so deep in the darkness of English football that's forgotten about on the main stage, as it were. But yeah, I think definitely it's a fixture that belongs in the Championship, if not the Premier League, isn't it? And as you say, it's two clubs that definitely deserve to be playing each other at a higher level. Some of the standout talents that really kind of put on a show. I remember Luco Nines played brilliantly every single time we've seen him. And then that's evenly matched with our players. We always seem to turn up just as much as you do, and I think that's what generates the really good performance and the fact that people can watch it and think, oh wow, what an advert for League One this is. And it actually shouldn't be an advert for League One. It should be an advert for normal football that people watch every week on TV and Premier League and the Championship. But hopefully it's not an advert for League One anytime soon, and it will turn into an advert for Championship or Premier League.
I mean, me as a Sunderland fan, personally, I love going to Fratton Park because of like the intimidating atmosphere. But overall, our record at Fratton Park over the last couple of years has been absolutely horrendous. We always seem to either concede late or not turn up at all, and we're always guaranteed to get normally a player sent off at Fratton Park. To be honest, I remember one fixture back in 2010. It was a 1-1 draw. We scored a penalty early on through Darren Bent. And then we had 2 red cards with Lee Cattermole and then David Myler coming off the bench to elbow someone in the face. And we conceded in stoppage time, Dindan. And that was the year we went down as well. Even the games where you've potentially like been below us in the table, even in the Premier League, you always turn up against us. I don't know what it is, honestly.
Yeah, it might be the red and white. It might be something else.
I mean, we were playing it in our away kit that night, so it surely can't be that.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, just a side note on that one. Lee Cattermole playing for you in 2010. He still plays. He was still playing for you just a season or two ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was, I think, 30 when he left. So he was I think he was about 21, 22 back then. I'd have to check the stats in a moment. But he was just like, with him, we miss him so much now, Caps, because he knows what it means to the fans to like ground out a result, particularly away from home, because like his role protecting the back four, not necessarily like the best skillful player we have in the squad, or we did have in the squad, like he would accept that himself. But all he wants to do is just win and give 110%. And there's not many players we've had, obviously since Kevin Ball, an ex-player you had, that we can be like really proud of, because you see some of the players now who have like brilliant fancy footwork, but they're just, is it lazy overall to track back? And that's something that Sunderland fans simply can't stand. But I think in League One, you do have to get that style a little bit more, because it's all about grounding out results and not necessarily playing well. And Lee Cattermole was the key example of that when we had him, particularly in the one season we had him in League One, and now we just miss him massively. And like, we thought he would be a lot easy to replace in terms of quality, but that's turned out completely the opposite way. If we were offered the chance to bring him back right now, Sunderland fans would snap their hands off and bring him back to the Stadium of Light in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think you don't truly realise the importance of grinding out results until someone like that has left the club, and it's just amplifies it massively, doesn't it, for everyone to see that we really need that 1-0 at Accrington, for example, don't we? And that, because then that's the key, that's the 3 points, and then off you go. But it's what a lot of, I don't know if it's the same for you, but a lot of Pompey fans don't like to watch unattractive football because they're used to the fancy stuff and they're used to whatever. Feels like ages ago since we saw anything remotely fancy, but we've played some really nice football with the team we've got, but we haven't been able to grind out the results effectively enough to merit a promotion out of this league. So I think it's a tough one for Pompey fans to kind of get accustomed to, but we really need to start working on just getting the result. Playing dreadfully, that's absolutely fine, but get the goals in the back of the net and get the points and go. And it's something that, we want to see attractive football. That's what we pay for. But in the long run, you pay for a promotion if you just bear with us and let us play some tricky football. But I think, as you say, it's the only way that teams can get out of League One is to not play the most exuberant football you've ever seen, but to just grind out those results and get the points on the board.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in League One, there is a little bit of an exception, because like going to grounds where like home teams are going to make it intimidating, and you need that away support to like galvanise the team to like ground out those results. And like injuries, I feel, down in League One are a lot more frequent as well. So it's all about using the squad depth and just like nicking those results and like using the best defensive players you have on the pitch to like their best full potential. And with Sunderland fans, I feel like if we were in the Premier League, I think the culture needs to sort of change a bit, because I do like players who like show a bit of passion, put the tackles in and like give 110%. The football might not be great, but when you're in the Premier League, it's all about the quality to that next level. And I feel like in the 10 years, there was a few like blips with some players we had, like Sessegnon and Steve Malbronk, that could potentially take us to that next level with the players that we could have brought in to like build the team around them. But I still feel with Sunderland fans, like the culture is all about just like getting stuck in, being physical, and like defending in numbers, but also like scoring the goals, putting the crosses into like the big target man, big man, little man, like we had with Super Kevin Phillips and Niall Quinn, to get those 3 points, which ended up us finishing 7th on 2 occasions in 2000 and 2001.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the same for Pompey. It's all about those key star men, isn't it, that you remember for years and years once they've left. Some of the people that I can remember, I think Carnu is my all-time favourite Pompey player.
Yeah, player he was, wasn't he?
He was unbelievable. But we've had some amazing talent with Luar. We had Linvoy Primus, Peter Crouch, Glenn Johnson back in the day, Todorov, all these brilliant names that I could list off. And David James, England's number 1 at the time. So we had some fantastic talent. But that was replicated in the atmosphere at the time. We had, not to blow my own trumpet, but you might have seen Jose Mourinho's comments about such a small stadium, but such an incredible atmosphere. The most memorable game for me I've ever watched was when we welcomed AC Milan to Fratton Park, and I got to
Ronaldinho.
Got to watch Ronaldinho, and he said it's the best atmosphere in world football. And Thierry Henry put the Pompey shirt for those very special Pompey fans. He wore that at the end of the game when Arsenal beat us. So yeah, it's such a historical club with so much going for it, and it's the same with Sunderland and your days in the Premier League. You're probably more recently than us. You were up there, weren't you? But it still lingers around, doesn't it? And those days are desperately wanted back by Pompey fans, and I'm sure that the same goes for Sunderland fans.
I mean, recently I watched a Copper 90 documentary about, it was mainly to do with your rivalry of Southampton, but just like the whole culture around Portsmouth Football Club, I just thought was absolutely fantastic, and how passionate your fans are. Particularly, was it that you mentioned there, the Portsmouth Ronaldinho saying it was an unbelievable atmosphere. Jose Mourinho saying despite such a small stadium, your fans cannot really intimidate opposition. I just feel like we're just missed massively, like the culture of our club. Like we have to be in the Premier League within like the next decade, because it's massively needed. Like our fans like don't deserve at all what we've been through in the past 10 years, do they?
No, they don't. And I have watched your Netflix documentaries, and whether your fans like them or not, I think they're a great reflection on just how central the football club is to just the city's ethos itself. And it has a massive reflection on the people, doesn't it? And the people of Sunderland. And it is all about the fans, isn't it, at the end of the day? And I think that's what 100%. we're really struggling with right now, is the fact that maybe fans won't be able to play a part in football for quite some time. But fans are, especially with clubs the size of Pompey and Sunderland, they are central to the success of the team. And the football club's the beating heart of the city. We saw it on Netflix, and I think that's the Copper 90 documentary is great, but that documents one rivalry against the team that we have. Although you get a great representation of what it is to be a Pompey fan and the people and the fantastic faces that we've got here, to have several seasons of a Netflix show that can be viewed by everyone around the world is a great asset to have, and whether it shows you in a good light or not, I think it's a great thing for the football club. I wonder how you feel about it, but go on.
Well, like looking at it now, there was some bits I didn't like about it, but I think we've got to be like grateful that we have it at the moment, because like with the financial situation our club could find itself in, like new potential buyers could be looking at that documentary and think there's something we can achieve if we go there. I just feel like obviously with the world is out there to watch it, people can like take their view on it in a different lot. I mean, Sunderland fans, personally, it was two very different documentary series. Obviously the first series was when we got relegated to League One, and that was heartbreaking to watch because the performances on the pitch were poor. But in the second series, it was all about too much of like the ownership and like the stuff that went on in the boardroom, which I think disappointed Sunderland fans a bit, because they wanted it more to be about the fan culture at the club, and we just felt too much it was more about Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven. But if a new owner's watching it, they could think, I could do better than some of the decisions they've made, and like I could really get these fans on side and build something massive here. And that's what all Sunderland fans hope right now, but it's just a case of selling the club to the right owner.
Yeah, it's a great guide of do's and don'ts, isn't it, for any prospective owner that you've got coming in. Charlie Methven is an absolute joy to watch as a Pompey fan.
A bit like David Brent in The Office, he reminds me. Constructing his board meetings.
Yeah, no, I think, I remember more distinctly the Wembley, the episode where you document the Wembley game. Is just, he although he is central to it, and I can understand why a lot of Sunderland fans don't want him to be, it's still great to get that kind of insight from an outside view of how the people at the top are feeling at the time. But as you say, I think, are they doing another season? Have you been commissioned for one?
At the moment, no. But if things potentially pick up, then I don't know. I think full well 73 would love the opportunity to come back, because they would just love to see a season in production where we eventually go on to win promotion, because that would just really generate a lot of viewing figures. But it feels like there's just a massive curse around the club when the Netflix cameras come at the moment, which really infuriates the fans. But I believe that that's simply no excuse to like not perform on the pitch. But I think if the cameras were to go in the dressing room like it did in the Manchester City Amazon documentary, I think that might be a little bit too far, because I think it might change like the whole mood around like players wanting to come to the club where everything's like documented. But I wouldn't say no to another season as long as we do win promotion, but that's not guaranteed. You have to get the performances on the pitch first.
I think Tottenham have got one coming out, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. Yeah,
they've got one where I think I saw a picture of all as a fly on the wall documentary, like the All or Nothing Manchester City one. I just think there's nowhere to hide then, is there? Like everything is laid out for everyone to see, plain and simple, is exactly what Jose's saying to those players. I agree. I don't think that's, especially for the club that Sunderland's been so open to all this kind of thing. We've really got a great insight into it. I think that is probably a step too far for you. And I definitely, if there was a Pompey example, I definitely wouldn't want that to happen. The only, it's a very good documentary actually. The only thing we have to compare to your Netflix is a documentary called Our Club. It was made by a guy called Barnaby, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it was basically the fall and rise of Portsmouth Football Club right back from the beginning. And there's all sorts of interviews with the people that were there on the morning, and I was one of them that woke up to the news that we were just minutes from non-existence, and the steps that were taken on that day to make sure that Pompey survived and could continue to be what it is. There was an incredible group of people that came together and put in some, a large, wealthy business owners in Portsmouth came together and thought, you know what, we can't let this die. This has got to be a mainstay for these Pompey fans who have been through thick and thin so far. And for it to result in absolutely nothing and non-existence would just be an absolute no-go. So people came together at the time. A man called Ian McInnes, who was the chairman of the Pompey Supporters Trust, still is a massive Pompey fan, and he was the driving force behind the saviour of the football club. It wasn't just him, it was thousands of Pompey fans that each put £1,000 each into the football club. Us as a family were one of them that thought, you know what, let's just, and I think any football fan in that situation would just go, you know what, let's just put some money in just to get the football club back on its feet. Luckily, we're in a position now where I can say that ex-Disney chief executive is now behind the football club, and we've made a profit last year in terms of our revenue, and our accounts look good, which is really rare for a football club at this level. So we're lucky and we're very blessed to have that now after such a tough time that we had for a number of years between the Premier League and then the darkest days in League Two. But that's all been discussed and documented on Our Club, which is a fantastic watch. I was lucky enough to go to a screening of it, and it was just fantastic. Everyone in the room was just mesmerised by what they'd put together, and you don't quite remember. I think that'll be a nice thing for you to look back on it on the Sunderland documentary with Netflix, is however long they keep it on for, but that's definitely something to look back in time. In 20 years, you'll go, oh wow, and remember that Netflix year when, you know, we were relegated again, and you just sit there and think, oh, remember what Charlie was saying at the time, and just all his comments, and you think, well, look where we are now, and hopefully you'll be able to do that when you're back alongside the big boys again.
I mean, I thought my favourite episode in the entire documentary was the Checkatrade Trophy final in 2019. I mean, it smashed the attendance record for the weekend of football. Overall, it was just one of the best finals at Wembley entertainment value I've ever seen, really, the new Wembley Stadium. I mean, just an overall fantastic game of football. I mean, we dominated the first half, McGeady's free kick, Lewis Morgan testing McGillivray with a volley, and us coming close on a few occasions, dominating the possession. And then second half, you came out all guns blazing, hit the post. Jamal Lowe with his, was that in extra time? That was extra time. Was it? Who got the equalising goal for you? I can't.
It was Nathan Thompson and Jamal Lowe.
Nathan Thompson's header, but where I was like the fans that were sitting around me that we knew it was coming. You were knocking on the door so much, and it was a classic Jack Ross performance where we play so brilliantly in the first half, and then second half we just sit back so deep and then just invite on pressure. And then it came to the penalties, which it was such a shame because where I was sitting, like all the Sunderland fans were so confident considering we got that very late goal from McGeady that would have knocked the confidence out of your players. But all of your penalties were just absolutely spot. I remember John McLaughlin almost got to one, but the rest of the four were just absolutely brilliant. But McLaughlin got nowhere near. I mean, Ollie Hawkin, he took the last one, didn't he? Was Ollie Hawkin just absolutely hammered it into the net, and just overall, despite us coming out with the defeat, it was just a brilliant game to watch overall.
I think it was actually Catamol that missed your pen, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was.
That was the deciding factor of it. But as you say, a brilliant example of a game of two halves. And as we said earlier, it should have been a much higher profile game than it was. For those who were watching it at home and for those that were in the stadium, I think you'll all agree that it's one of the best games that we've watched, one of the best occasions in quite a few years for both football clubs. Definitely Jamal Lowe is one of my all-time favourite goals. That little lob of the keeper was absolutely brilliant.
I don't know what McLaughlin was doing so far off his line. He was in no man's land for it.
No, I know. I don't know what was going on there, but it's fine by us because we managed to profit quite nicely out of it. And and you say you were hoping that had knocked the stuffing out of us. Well, we were so upset with that goal right at the end of extra time, and then off it was to penalties. And I'd say the same for you. I think bar Catamol, Sunderland penalties were on point as well. So yeah, and it replicated for us only just this week against Oxford, where you miss out by a penalty. But I believe for you, it must have been one of the toughest ones to take after not Leicester Square, Trafalgar Square the night before, and then the whole coming down and everything, and just the occasion of it, and Wembley, and how much of an atmosphere there was, and then to lose it on a penalty. How did that feel?
It was well, it's weird with was it the Checkatrade Trophy as it was called then, because it's sort of more of an event really for like football fans who not necessarily like don't get the opportunity to go to Wembley as often, and people can say whether it's a major trophy or not, but we would have liked to have won it because obviously we've not won a major trophy since 1973. But I think looking back on it now, I wish that we would have taken more of that performance, particularly in the first half, into the final where it mattered most, which was the playoff final against Charlton, which was our downfall, which we failed to win and failed to get promoted out of the league. So, yeah, despite it being a brilliant occasion, I wish that the performances sort of switched, to be honest. We would have played a lot better in the League One playoff final, although we might have not necessarily played well in the Portsmouth game, but it would have been 50-50 whether we would have got the result or not.
Yeah, I think that game you were gifted one, weren't you, against Charlton on that?
And we still couldn't turn it around.
That's the thing, but it surprises me that it's 47 years since a major trophy. Is hopefully you would have thought that it's now about time for League One champions to be added to that. And
yeah, we'd wish. The squad's miles off that we have at the moment, though. We're still missing some key players in like key areas of the pitch to bring in, and like our squad's so thin right now. It's all about whether the funds are available and whether we can attract the right players to come in, because at the moment we're miles off, unfortunately. I mean, top six at least, but in terms of the automatic promotion places, I'd say no.
Right. Okay. There you go. that's
Yeah,
that's
we're very unconfident right now with everything
yeah.
going on at the club. I mean, we wish we'd have the optimism and confidence that Pompey fans had at times.
Yeah, no, sure.
So I'm going into the latter stages of this interview. 4-0 written all over it. Where did like the idea come from, and what was like the inspiration to start your own football channel?
I was about 13 at the time. 2015 I started, and I was a squeaky, annoying little so-and-so. And I just picked up an iPhone 4S and stuck it in my dad's face and went, "What do you think of the game?" And then I think it was quite a poor loss at the time in the end of the season.
Good evening, Andrew.
Yeah, exactly. He went on a bit of a rant about how bad he thought the game was. I thought, well, people need to hear this. And at the time, Arsenal Fan TV, whatever you want to look to as the top tier of football vlogging on YouTube, Thogden, whatever, they were kind of emerging, but there wasn't really anything around, certainly from a Pompey perspective, by the fans, made by the fans, etc. And it's only kind of really come to fruition in the last 3 to 4 years, I would have said, in terms of the YouTube front of it. I did a season of it where I didn't put it on YouTube. I just kept them as little documentations of the football. And then my brother came to me and said, well, why don't you put them on YouTube? And Dad's catchphrase, Andrew, good morning, Andrew's always, said, this game's got 4-0 written all over it. Or you know when you say, oh, you're watching a game, you think, oh, this is a 0-0 written all over it. He's always said it's got 4-0 written all over it. So that's where the name came from.
Yeah.
That's how it started, and there have been several questions over the years of people saying, oh, you should change it, and since we've been doing it, I've never actually sat and watched us win 4-0, which is just such a dreadful stat, but hopefully it's going to happen at some point, maybe next season. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'd love to know how many betting slips that are in your gaff right now of Portsmouth to win 4-0 today.
Oh, so ridiculous amounts. Ridiculous. It's always been I think I don't know if he still does it anymore. I haven't asked him for a while, but Dad always had £1 on it to be 4-0. And he's been going for more than half a decade now. So you can imagine how much expenditure has been spent on. I'm not sure if he's doing it right from the start, but on a 4-0 win, it's been ridiculous. But when we eventually see a 4-0, I can imagine it's going to be a great day.
Yeah. Since you started the channel, like, how much has it changed, like, your life as a whole? Like, particularly like walking around Portsmouth, like, do you still get recognised of like the work you do, and like fans coming over to you saying like, this is absolutely superb, like the work you're doing, keep it up, and like the messages you receive also on Twitter as well?
The strangest place I've ever been recognised by someone was on holiday in Barcelona.
Wow.
And a Spanish bloke came up to me and said it's 4-0 written all over it, and I just thought, that's incredible. But yeah, we're walking around. So the problem is, I don't like to say it, but I have to be very careful with where I am, etc., because the city of Portsmouth is such a community based. Everyone knows everyone, and it's a great feeling when someone comes up to you and say, oh, really enjoy what you're doing. Thank you so much for giving me, and even people, not just Portsmouth, but we have viewers all over the world that say, well, this is a brilliant insight for us to get on the bandwagon and pretending we're alongside you at Fratton Park. I just think, well, that's exactly what we do it for, and that's exactly how we want people to appreciate it, and hopefully they enjoy it, and the good news is that people seem to. I've been says people in the McDonald's queue, people have let me go in front of them because they like the videos, and I'm like, no, we're not doing that. That's not. But yeah, it's McDonald's. It's normally a match day where it's people. I tell you what, there's a story to tell, is that back in the early days, I went up to people very nervously and asked them if they'd be willing to talk on camera to me about the football. Now people are very self-sacrificing. The fact they come up to you and say, oh, get on the show, get on the video, and that's always
the massive first hurdle, isn't it?
Yeah, that switch, that hurdle that we overcame was brilliant, and now it makes it a lot easier to produce the content that we send out weekly. And obviously it could be quite some time before we get to do it again, and we might have to be at a distance from people when we speak to them, but I'm sure you guys are the same. You'll still get out there, you still deliver it to the people that watch and enjoy your videos, and we'll just have to see where it takes us.
Yeah. Tom, thank you very much for joining us, mate. Absolute pleasure. We hope to meet again next season. Well, we will meet on the pitch, but obviously whether fans will be allowed back in or not, that's a different debate. One thing is for sure, that right now football vlogging and football fan channels might not be the same again beyond this season, which hopefully we can get fans back into stadiums and create the absolutely fantastic match day atmosphere that we all miss. So thank you for coming on, Tom. Pleasure talking to you, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, mate. It's been great. Speak to you soon.